Welcome to this explainer. When you hear the phrase exotic pet ownership, your mind probably jumps to, I don't know, iguanas or maybe a really loud parrot. But the reality is actually far more chilling. Right now, thousands of American households are keeping animals that are fully capable of killing an adult human. We are talking about literal apex predators with absolutely zero domestication history being kept by people with no formal training whatsoever. It's a genuinely terrifying reality, and to really wrap our heads around the scale of this, we need to look at the numbers. 4,500 to 5,500. That number right there, that represents the entire global wild tiger population. We're talking about every single tiger remaining across India, Russia, and Southeast Asia all combined. That is the entire wild population of the largest cat species on Earth. Just hold that number in your head for a second, because the contrast I'm about to show you is going to blow your mind. There are estimated to be in the low thousands of privately owned tigers right here in the United States. And no, I don't mean in zoos or accredited sanctuaries. We're talking about tigers living in private American backyards, basements, and garages. And honestly, what's most terrifying about this estimate is the uncertainty of it all. Nobody knows the exact number. For decades, thanks to these massive regulatory blind spots, a tiger could be bought, sold, and moved across state lines with less oversight than buying a used car. So what exactly is living behind these suburban fences? Section 1. Built for the kill. Look, raising a tiger on a living room couch from the time it's a tiny cub changes absolutely nothing about its lethal anatomy. Let's just break down the sheer biomechanical power we're dealing with here. First off, they have a bite force of over 1,000 pounds per square inch. That is literally strong enough to crush a prey's skull with a single bite. They can weigh over 600 pounds fully grown, and they can run in bursts exceeding 35 miles per hour. But the absolute most crucial point here, a tiger's forelimbs generate enough force to snap the spine of an adult deer with just one strike from a standing position. They don't even need a running start. And the specialization goes even deeper than that. Their claws are retractable, meaning they never touch the ground during normal walking. So unlike your dogs, a tiger's claws never dull. And this next part is wild. Their canine teeth actually have sensory receptors in them that are sensitive enough to detect the exact gap between a prey animal's vertebrae in total darkness. Plus, their shoulders are built specifically for pulling down prey in an ambush. You have to understand these terrifying physical traits, combined with a hunting instinct that requires absolutely no hunger and no provocation. Well, it's just neurological wiring present from birth. It's not some learned behavior you can just love out of them, which actually brings us to a really fatal psychological trap. Section 2. The domestication illusion. So there's this specific, really well-documented psychological pattern that causes private tiger owners to make catastrophic miscalculations about the animals in their homes. It's called the domestication illusion. Basically, it's the completely false belief that if a human raises an animal from infancy, bottle feeds it, and shows it physical affection, the animal somehow transfers its instinctive behavior onto that relationship. It creates this deadly false sense of security where an owner actually thinks their bottle-fed tiger is tame. But, as you might guess, science tells us a completely different story. We have to draw a hard line between two totally different biological realities here. A tiger in a home experiences habituation. It gets comfortable being around a specific person, which temporarily suppresses its underlying predatory response. Temporarily, it does not eliminate it. Now, domestication, like what produced the golden retriever from the wolf, that took thousands of years and generations of selective breeding to literally breed out those wild instincts. A living room compresses exactly 0% of that evolutionary process. Genetically speaking, it is the exact same animal stalking the forests of Siberia. And this right here is the fatal blind spot for owners. For a tiger, play behavior and hunting behavior draw on the exact same underlying nervous system. A playful paw swipe and a lethal hunting strike, they use identical muscle groups and reflexes. To the tiger, there is no magical dividing line between playing and hunting. It's just a matter of intensity. That line is completely invisible, and it is impossible for an owner to see until it has already been crossed. Section 3. The Roy Horn Incident. To really understand just how unpredictable this invisible line is, we just have to look at the ultimate proof that experience does not equal safety. Roy Horn, half of the internationally famous illusionist duo Siegfried and Roy, raised a white tiger named Manticore straight from infancy. For years, they had this relationship described as having deep trust, right? We're talking thousands of incident-free handlings. Then, on October 3, 2003, during a live performance at the Mirage Hotel in Vegas, Manticore suddenly seized Horn by the neck and dragged him off stage. Horn suffered massive blood loss, partial paralysis, and though he survived, he was forever changed, eventually passing away in 2021. And remember, this was an animal he had raised since it could literally fit in a small container. So what actually triggered the attack? Well, the uncertainty itself is kind of the whole point here. One theory holds that a crowd stimulus, like a sudden movement or a scent, triggered a predatory investigation, and Horn's attempt to redirect the tiger just became an obstruction. Another theory, and actually the one Horn himself maintained, was that he suffered a medical episode and stumbled, and the tiger was actually trying to drag him to safety. But think about this for a second. Both of these conflicting scenarios prove the exact same irreducible fact. A hand-raised animal produced a response that absolutely nobody saw coming in time to stop it. This leads to a really crucial takeaway. Years of data tracking by organizations like Big Cat Rescue reveal a very chilling pattern. They noted that experience did not accumulate into safety. It accumulated into familiarity. The animals involved in these tragic incidents were rarely wild-caught adults. They were overwhelmingly tigers raised in captivity from cubs, handled by the people who had the most direct hands-on experience. Their confidence was actually their fatal risk factor. You can clearly see how this risk compounds. Over 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years of incident-free contact, the handler's confidence dangerously escalates. Researchers who study human-wild-nice conflict have noted that the longer a relationship runs without an incident, the more an owner's misplaced certainty just grows and grows. But the tiger that hasn't shown an ounce of aggression in 10 years is running the exact same neurological hardware as the tiger that suddenly attacks in year 11. Section 4. The Cub Petting Pipeline. So you're probably wondering, where do all these captive tigers even come from? Well, we have to look at the systemic, profit-driven engine that supplies them. Roadside operations follow a very dark, incredibly consistent progression. Step 1. They breed tigers constantly, just to produce cubs so paying visitors can take photos with them. Step 2. Those cubs can only be safely handled for a really brief window, just a few months. Step 3. They inevitably become too large and way too dangerous. And Step 4. Those same cute cubs are warehoused, sold off to private owners, or in the absolute worst cases, they simply disappear from the record entirely. The public only ever sees that harmless little cub stage. And the tragic aftermath of all this constant overbreeding? It leaves accredited sanctuaries, the real ones, vetted by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, with overwhelming wait lists of tigers desperately needing placement. The market demand for cute, photo-ready cubs created this massive, dangerous gap in safe capacity for full-grown 400-pound tigers once private owners finally realize exactly what they've brought into their homes. Now, back in 2020, the docuseries Tiger King introduced global audiences to this whole subculture. But what's really important to take away from that is, while the show was treated largely as this crazy pop culture spectacle, it was actually documenting a massive regulatory failure. It literally showed us a system where an apex predator could be bred and sold in uncountable numbers with less federal oversight than a firearm. Fortunately, that undeniable, decades-long record of maulings and escapes finally forced a change. Before 2022, there was no federal registry at all, just these scattered state laws where a tiger might be licensed as livestock, maybe an exotic pet, or sometimes require no license at all. Then, in December 2022, the U.S. finally passed the Big Cat Public Safety Act. This restricted private ownership and mandated federal registration for the first time in American history, basically attempting to close this dangerous gap once and for all. But for the thousands of tigers already out there right now, here is the stark scientific reality. The science is basically limited to hindsight. Wildlife behaviorists cannot reliably predict a predatory response because, well, ethical research on predatory triggers just cannot be run as a controlled experiment on a living tiger. Researchers are mostly limited to reconstructing these incidents after the fact, which means the science stalls right when owners need it the most, before the attack happens. There is simply no known raising condition or bonding history that reliably suppresses a big cat's predatory drive over its entire lifetime. Which leaves us with this final, honestly chilling thought. Somewhere out there, right now, in a quiet residential neighborhood, a 400-pound predator is sitting in a DIY enclosure behind a flimsy fence. It carries the exact same instinctive architecture it was born with. It's just stronger now and far more capable of acting on it. So you really have to ask yourself, has it actually been tamed? Or is it just waiting? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning what you think you know, and I'll see you next time.